Two things just happened that Caitlin Clark fans have been waiting 2 years for. WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert finally admitted on national television that Clark is the biggest star in the league, and the new collective bargaining agreement is now holding corrupt WNBA referees finally accountable. The commissioner, who once defended bad officiating and promoted rivalries over player safety, is now presiding over a system designed to fire the refs who looked the other way. Neither of those things happened because Engelbert grew a conscience. They happened because Caitlin Clark made ignoring her finally impossible. Why do you think Engelbert is finally changing her tune? Let me know down in the comments below.
Because our season's shorter, now we'll be able to play up to 52 games over the life of this agreement. When I came in, I think we were playing 32. So you need that, and you need those stars. And Caitlin, without question, has been a huge part of the growth of our league. And she's not only an incredible player, but a great ambassador for the game. You've seen her she's done some work with the NBA on NBC this year, and couldn't be prouder how she's handling the moment.
Cathy Engelbert sat down on 60 Minutes, one of the most watched news programs in America, and basically told the world how she felt about Caitlin Clark. The timing of that interview is worth remembering because the WNBA hadn't seen anything close to that level of public attention before, and it was all pointing directly at one person. Clark had just wrapped up a college career that broke every viewership record women's basketball had ever produced, and fans who'd never watched a WNBA game were suddenly buying tickets specifically to see her play.
I noticed when you're asking about Caitlin a lot, you bring up other rookies as well.
No league's ever about one player. That player could get hurt or whatever. So I think it's just to give recognition that in sports, people watch for compelling content and rivalries. And you can't do that alone as one person.
So what did Engelbert do with that moment? She sat in front of a national audience and said, "No league's ever about one player." That's the phrase that stuck, because you don't say or whatever about your league's most watched player getting injured unless you genuinely don't see her as the center of what you're building. Engelbert didn't come up through basketball. She came from Deloitte, where she served as CEO and became the first woman to hold that position there. And her whole instinct in that 60 Minutes interview reads like classic corporate risk management. Don't let any single asset become so important to your brand that the asset gains leverage over you. That thinking works fine when you're managing an accounting firm. It doesn't work when the asset you're downplaying is the reason your arenas are suddenly full and your broadcast partners are calling back.
These fans came to Central Indiana from Newfoundland, Canada? And you're here why?
Just to see the Beaver game. Caitlin Clark.
The Rookie of the Year situation is where the pattern became impossible to dismiss. When Clark won Rookie of the Year in 2024, Engelbert delivered the award over a phone call, on speakerphone, while the Fever were in Connecticut. There's actual video of this. No ceremony, no appearance, no real moment of recognition for the player who just dragged the entire league into a new level of public attention.
You just have somebody that wants to say a couple things really quick.
So hi, Coach Size. This is WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. Do we have the team all together?
Hello. Yes, ma'am.
What a record-breaking season for you and the entire team, full of outstanding performances.
Yes.
Congratulations, Caitlin. You are the 2024 Kia WNBA Rookie of
Fast forward to 2025, when Paige Beckers won Rookie of the Year. Engelbert flew in, showed up in person, and turned it into an actual event, which is exactly what that award should be. Two players, same award. Completely different treatment from the same commissioner who just spent a year telling national television that the league wasn't about any one player. That's the commissioner who was running the league while Clark was selling it out, and while Engelbert was busy managing Clark like a corporate liability, Clark was building something that would eventually make that whole approach collapse on itself.
If you recall from 1979 when those two rookies came in from a big college rivalry, one white, one black. And so we have that moment with these two. But the one thing I know about sports, you need rivalry. That's what makes people watch. They want to watch games of consequence between rivals. They don't want everybody being nice to one another.
Engelbert went on CNBC's Power Lunch, and when the anchor pressed her directly about the whole Clark and flagrant fouls situation, her answer had nothing to do with player safety. Instead, she said it's important for Clark to have heated rivalries, in this case against Angel Reese. She compared it to Bird and Magic, said, "There's no more apathy, everybody cares, and told the audience that rivalry is what makes people watch.
We do sit at this intersection of culture and sport and fashion and music. Like, the WNBA players are really looked at now as kind of cultural icons.
True.
And when you have that, you have a lot of attention on you. There's no more apathy. Everybody cares. It is a little that Bird Magic moment.
Bird and Magic is a loaded comparison to reach for, because that rivalry was two elite players going at each other on the court at the highest level for years. It wasn't one player getting hit with hard fouls while referees stood there, and it wasn't fans directing attacks at either of them in arenas. Engelbert grabbed that comparison because it sounds exciting, and exciting was the frame she wanted, not accountability.
Social media is different today than it was in 1979 when it didn't exist. But, I always tell the players, I was told a long time ago, if someone's typing something in and you wouldn't ask their advice, ignore it. So it's a balance, but certainly from a marketing dollars, but corporate partners are stepping up to endorse these players.
Meanwhile, what was actually happening on the court during Clark's first 2 seasons was getting harder to ignore. Flagrant fouls that didn't get called, hard contact that refs swallowed, and a pattern that Fever head coach Stephanie White started documenting publicly. White cited a -31 free throw discrepancy in certain series, and that's not a number you explain away with, well, sometimes officiating evens out. When your coach is going to the press with specific statistics about foul differentials, that's not frustration after a bad game, that's a coach building a record. One of the clearest examples came during a playoff game against the Connecticut Sun in 2024. When Clark took a hit square in the eye from Dejonai Carrington and was left visibly dazed. No foul called. Nothing. The league's biggest draw just got hit in the face during a playoff game, and the officials decided that wasn't worth a whistle.
As everyone else has seen this angle, I'm calling her in, and I'm saying to her, I need answers.
When Engelbert got pressed on the officiating pattern, her answer was that referees are human. That's it. Referees are human. You say they're human when a ref misses a bang-bang call in a high-stakes game. You don't say it when a coach is presenting you with documented free throw differentials and your most watched player is getting hit in the face without a foul being called in the playoffs. So what Engelbert was doing across those 2 seasons was pretty straightforward. She took the sellouts, took the viewership records, took the new sponsors, put all of it in the league's pitch materials, and every time someone raised a documented officiating problem, she pivoted to rivalries are good for the sport. The commercial upside went into the league's column. The governance problems got deflected.
With the increased attention this year, there's also been increased scrutiny about the quality of refereeing. Curious if there has been any conversation about whether it's referee pay, referee training, anything to ensure that is as good as it can be.
Yeah, and the one thing as a very long-term sports fan I know is that officiating and refereeing is always at the top of a fan's list, of the media's list. Obviously, we work hard on training. We work hard on consistency. Obviously, not every, they're humans.
That only kept working because Clark kept showing up every game, kept filling buildings, and kept being exactly the player everyone came to watch despite the contact and the no calls. But Stephanie White's public statements weren't disappearing. The free throw numbers weren't disappearing. And the WNBPA was paying close attention to every single one of them. At some point between the 60 Minutes interview and the Pat McAfee show, Cathy Engelbert did the math. On Pat McAfee, Engelbert called Clark the biggest star in the league. Not one of the biggest, not a major contributor, not rivalries are what drive the sport. The biggest star in the league. That's a complete reversal from the woman who sat on 60 Minutes 2 seasons ago and said or whatever about Clark getting hurt. Nothing about Clark's talent changed between those 2 statements, and nothing about her marketability changed either. Clark was pulling in the same crowds, breaking the same records, and driving the same sponsor calls the whole time Engelbert was on television explaining why no league is about one player.
Because our season's shorter, now we'll be able to play up to 52 games over the life of this agreement. When I came in, I think we were playing 32. So you need that, and you need those stars. And Caitlin, without question, has been a huge part of the growth of our league. And she's not only an incredible player, but a great ambassador for the game. You've seen her she's done some work with the NBA on NBC this year, and couldn't be prouder how she's handling the moment.
What changed is that the CBA got signed, the revenue numbers got locked in, and Engelbert no longer had any room to keep treating Clark as a variable she could publicly downplay without financial consequence. That's it. That's the whole explanation. The Pat McAfee audience is also worth thinking about for a second, because it's not a WNBA crowd. It's a broad sports audience, a lot of it skeptical of women's basketball, a lot of it the exact demographic the league needs to keep growing, and Engelbert walked onto that show and said, "Clark is the biggest star in the league." That's not a slip. That's a deliberate repositioning, and the timing, right after the CBA announcement, is not an accident.
Congratulations on the new 7-year CBA getting done. We know that is very difficult. There were certainly work stoppage conversations, and it felt like there was a lot of posturing happening on both sides, both through the league and the players. And then we saw photos of you all working together and getting this deal done, which is going to see an increase in pay and seemingly very happy operation right now. How did we get to this point, and was there ever any sketchy moments where you thought maybe there would be a work stoppage for the WNBA?
Well, it's interesting, Pat, CBAs tend to get done at the 11th hour. And I mean, I think this one was a function of how important and meaningful it was, not just for the WNBA and women's basketball, but maybe all women's sports. So
let's talk about what the new CBA actually does to the officiating situation, because this is where 2 years of documented failures finally turn into something with teeth. The agreement mandates 3 formal meetings per season between the league and the players' union specifically to review flagrant and technical fouls, with required transparency around those officiating decisions. On top of that, the union now gets access to points of emphasis videos, the same educational materials that tell referees what level of physicality is and isn't acceptable on the court. That second part matters more than it might sound. Before this CBA, referees operated in what was basically a black box. They got their instructions from the league, players had no visibility into what those instructions actually said. And when a call didn't get made, there was no way to know if the ref missed it or if the league had quietly told officials to let more contact go. Now the union sees the same videos the refs see. So if the points of emphasis say flagrant contact should be called and a referee keeps not calling it, that's no longer deniable.
This is crazy, but this is good news, okay? Finally, the refereeing problems are being addressed after a season-long debacle of jail yard, prison ball, rugby, NFL football. It looked like offensive line versus defensive line. It looked like you was doing the Oklahoma drill in football practice in these WNBA games.
The WNBA Players Association brought documented officiating failures to the bargaining table, and the league agreed to address them. The -31 free throw discrepancy Stephanie White cited publicly, the missed calls, the pattern of hard contact on Clark that refs repeatedly chose to ignore, all of that built the factual record that made officiating reform something the union could demand, and the league couldn't just wave away. When you walk into a negotiation with specific numbers and specific incidents on paper, the other side can't just say referees are human and end the conversation.
But it does include that the union will be given access to any informational, educational, and point of emphasis videos regarding officiating, and it requires 3 meetings per season between the league and the union, specifically to review flagrant fouls and technical fouls.
The 3 formal review sessions per season create a paper trail for referee performance that flat out didn't exist before. When officials are consistently getting flagrant and technical foul decisions wrong, and there's now a formal process that surfaces those mistakes 3 times a season, those officials become visible in a way they never were when the whole system ran on vibes and league discretion. Refs who can't hold up under that kind of review don't stay in the league, and that's not a threat. It's just how accountability works when you write it into a contract. The WNBPA's executive director Terry Jackson made clear after Engelbert's CNBC comments that the union wasn't going to let rivalry framing substitute for actual player protection. That statement came from the same union that then sat across the table from the league and negotiated officiating transparency into a binding agreement. Jackson wasn't just venting, she was drawing a line that showed up in the final contract.
But they are clearly in discussions with the players about the physicality of the league. Hey, this is okay. You guys have complained about this and this. We're gonna make these two things a point of emphasis. Okay, no hand checking when somebody's driving to the basket. Giving people space to land. Whatever the points of emphasis are from the players, it sounds like the league is taking that information, emphasizing it to the referees, putting video together so that everybody's on the same page. So
Engelbert calling Clark the biggest star in the league on Pat McAfee and the new CBA's officiating reforms aren't two separate stories running at the same time. They're the same story, and the refs who spent 2 seasons swallowing whistles on Clark are now operating inside a system specifically built to find them. While Engelbert was busy telling fans that no league is about one player, every arena Clark walked into was proving her wrong in real time. Clark's first WNBA season didn't just sell out Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Road teams were selling out too, specifically on nights when Indiana came to town. The Chicago Sky reported their highest attendance figures in years when the Fever visited. Same story in New York, in Seattle, in Phoenix. Teams that had been playing in half-empty buildings were suddenly turning people away at the door. And the only thing that changed on their schedule was that Caitlin Clark was now on it. So the revenue argument for Clark was never really about Indiana. It was about every franchise in the league collecting more money on nights they hosted her. And that's a completely different kind of financial reality than she's good for the Fever.
I just spoke about Sue Bird over a week ago, and everybody talking about other WNBA players not being appreciated. Nobody insulted them. Nobody dismissed their contribution. We were simply saying, despite the contributions for years and years and years, a lot of people didn't care. Fair or not, until Caitlin Clark came along.
Viewership records that had stood for years started falling in the first few weeks of the season. Games that would have drawn maybe 300,000 viewers on a good night prior to Clark entering the league were pulling over 1 million, and the spikes tracked directly to Clark's games rather than spreading evenly across the schedule. Broadcast partners noticed immediately, because when you can point to one player and say, viewership doubles when she plays, you're not pitching a concept anymore, you're presenting data. Rights negotiations don't work the same way when the numbers are that specific and that consistent. Sponsors started calling from categories that had never touched women's basketball before. State Farm, which already had Clark from her college days, stuck around. But new partners came in from finance, from tech, from consumer brands that run the kind of broad market campaigns that don't show up in niche sports properties. The previous CBA wasn't built to handle a commercial footprint that size, and the gap between what the league was earning and what the existing agreement allowed players to collect became impossible to keep ignoring.
We're bringing more and more fans to this league, people that have maybe never watched the WNBA before, and it kind of takes your breath away at points.
The WNBPA knew exactly what they had walking into those negotiations. Clark didn't sit at the bargaining table, but her first 2 seasons built the financial case that every player at that table got to use. Gross revenue sharing starting in 2026, higher minimum salaries, expanded rosters, a longer season, and 3 new expansion franchises including the Golden State Valkyries. None of that happens without a league that's worth dramatically more than it was in 2023. The players' union pushed for those terms because the revenue growth gave them the numbers to back up every ask. And that growth had a very specific face on it. For the Fever specifically, what the new CBA builds is a structure where Clark, Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hull, and Sophie Cunningham are competing inside a league with actual financial accountability, better resources flowing to teams, and a salary floor that reflects what women's professional basketball is genuinely worth now. That roster going into 2026 operates in a completely different environment than the one Clark entered as a rookie, and the contract sitting underneath all of it is the reason why.
Such an incredible moment on a global scale for our game, for our players. It's like the fans are absolutely incredible. It's the same when we go on the road. There's so many people that are showing up in Fever gear. It's really affecting, teams all across our league, which is a really great thing. And, really, I think we're just scratching the surface.
Engelbert spent 2 seasons telling anyone who'd listen that the WNBA's growth was a collective thing, a product of rivalries and compelling content and the sport's natural evolution. And she wasn't entirely wrong that other factors contributed. But the CBA that just got signed only exists in its current form because one player changed the financial math for every team, every broadcast deal, and every sponsorship conversation the league had over the last 2 years. The agreement is now a legal document that spells out, in binding terms, exactly how much the league Clark built is worth, and Engelbert has to defend those numbers to owners and broadcast partners every single day. Engelbert didn't change her mind about Clark. She changed her public position because the CBA locked in a financial structure where Clark's value is now a number on a spreadsheet she has to defend to owners, broadcast partners, and expansion franchises that paid real money to enter this league. The officiating reforms don't disappear based on whatever Engelbert says in her next interview. Those review sessions happen whether she's on Pat McAfee or nowhere at all, because they're written into a binding contract now. Clark went into her rookie season and set the all-time single-season assists record with 337, broke the rookie three-pointer record with 122, and dragged the Fever back to the playoffs for the first time since 2016. She broke 62 records along the way. 2026 is the first season the full weight of the new CBA applies, and the refs who spent 2 years swallowing whistles on Clark are now operating inside a system specifically built to find them. Why do you think Engelbert is finally changing her tune? Let me know down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.